Well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Live. It is me, Daniel, and I am joined at the desk, as I always am, by the cocaine to my bear, Mr. Samuel David Camp. What is up?
It's good to be with you, Daniel.
So this is, as you can probably tell already, this is going to be the all-sick episode of the Collision Live. We are both being sick for, well...
The convalescent episode, I would say.
It seems like we've been sick literally for like months.
Well, someone in our house has been sick
we
for the past.
We sort of aligned, so we
the stars have aligned, so we can be sick together.
Yeah, we sound like smokers, or like the lead singer of Skillet, which is a little more cool to sound like. But hey, we're excited to be back and to be back because we did miss last week. I was out of town. I think we have some pictures.
Yeah, what were you doing out of town, Daniel?
Wild self-plug. So I have a new book coming out in October, God, Heroes, and Everyday Dragons. Probably the best book you have not read yet, so super excited for that book. But I actually went with my brother. We met up in Nashville. Lifeway brought us out there to film some videos for that, so we kind of spent our day in green screen and kind of filmed some teaching stuff, and then out and about.
And then you come back here to our awesome studio and think,
boy,
am I grateful that we don't have to have one of those tiny little studios like they do up there.
I was out there to say it's hard to film without Sam by my side, just my brother. But hey, so that was fun. So we're doing that. We'll obviously have more hashtag self-plugs as we get closer to that. But we're excited to be back because there's been some stuff in culture that has happened while we've been gone. And there's always stuff to kind of engage with as a Christian with what's going on. So there's some interesting stories this week to do so. So why don't we kick things off like we always do with some cultural conversations. Maybe the first story, and actually this is somewhat of an audible because we don't have a graphic for this, but it is probably the biggest story that I forgot that we should talk about, and that is that there is Peeps flavored Pepsi.
I wondered if this was going to rear its cute little head again.
Yes, cute little yellow bird-like head. So as you can believe, I definitely tried this thing the other day. I'm part of the cult of Peeps. I was very excited to try this out, although I've been sick.
And among cults, it is...
It is a growing cult.
Which is unfortunate because it should be a dying cult.
So I take great pride in the fact that I've tried pretty much any Peep-related stuff. I tried gummy Peeps, which came out earlier this year. Those were definitely satisfying. And I must say, Peeps Pepsi, I need to give it a second run. Did it taste good? Of course it tasted good, but it was also mixed with like cough drops and stuff in my mouth, so I need to get the pure taste. But hey, definitely something that Christians should be engaged with and aware of. So if you haven't tried so, I encourage you to try some Peeps Pepsi. But probably the second most notable thing kind of going on in our culture is kind of something that we've had on the back burner of this show for like weeks. We keep
probably a whole month.
Kind of like a general topic, but that keeps kind of rearing its head. So we're finally going to be able to get to it, and that is kind of the notion of like the anti-Christian bias in Hollywood. So this has been a conversation that's been going on for a while. There's been some articles that sort of gained traction on the internet. One article, Villainous Christianity, which kind of reflected on the recent like Oscar-nominated films and kind of the way that, according to the author, it kind of negatively portrayed religion. Another article that kind of has been making the rounds on social media lately, what the 2023 Oscars love and hate about religion, which did another kind of similar evaluation of just the way that these kind of celebrated films are dealing with religion and like the religious characters in it. But kind of what brought this conversation kind of back to the cultural forefront is that Christians have kind of been weighing in on this apparent anti-Christian bias in Hollywood, but now Hollywood itself seems to be weighing in as well. So Rainn Wilson, who is famous for several things, but most famous for his role in The Office, tweeted this out. He said, "I do think there is an anti-Christian bias in Hollywood. As soon as the David character in The Last of Us started reading from the Bible, I knew he was going to be a horrific villain. Could there be a Bible-reading preacher on a show who is actually loving and kind?" And even just like the comments below this tweet are fascinating because like tons of people weighing in on both sides of like, yeah, of course, I've been saying that for years, and other people kind of pushing back. on it, so that we can kind of get into that. Like, does it matter how Hollywood portrays Christianity? Is the way they portray it fair? Is it a bias? Like, what is your sort of takeaways from some of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there is a bias to how Hollywood portrays Christians in general. I think some maybe get closer to accurate than others, and but like I don't think it should be surprising that there is a bias, and in the same way that unfortunately there is a bias in Christian films of how they portray non-Christians, and we'll probably get into that more in a bit, but I think one, yes, there is a bias, and two, yes, it shapes maybe a bit how culture views Christianity, but it's also like not at all surprising, and I don't feel like I'm necessarily threatened by it, but it's like, well, yeah, it's whatever. Like, of course they're gonna go that route because they've kind of been doing that forever. Just sort of caricature, making caricatures out of who these Christians are, and so it's like that's
Yeah, because
kind of expected
it's
at this
definitely
point.
not like a new, like if there's a religious character in a show, like more often than not, they're like some creepy cult creep, like
Yeah,
that's gonna like manipulate, and he's like real sleazy, and kind of like an amplified like televangelist kind of. You don't get very many. Like,
which,
even
to be fair, like there are some
it's not a
creepy.
far step.
Like I think the church has also given lots of, like, lots of fuel to that fire. Like,
Well, that's even like because even some of the pushback, and both those articles that I shared, I actually thought were good articles. I know some people have mixed opinions on them. I thought they were both good, but some of the pushback, at least to the former one, was like the woman talking show, like people saying like, but it's a true story. Like this isn't fictional Christian. Like this is an actual,
Yeah.
like some of the events of the story, the movie they told, it weren't true. Like the ending wasn't true to what happened in real life, but like the situation was,
Yeah.
like is Hollywood, are they just working with what we give them, like as
Yeah,
the church, like so some of that is like, hey, that there are those and those gonna make for interesting stories, but like because even in the comments people were trying to think of examples of like positive in Hollywood, like, and like it is hard to think of them. Like the one that came to my mind, and it came to like, the most frequent one that came up was like Signs, with
yeah,
what's his name, the Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson, like his
yeah,
character where he's sort of like a preacher and he kind of loses his faith and he comes back to it, and like it's portrayed in like a very positive sense of that is good that he returned to his faith and he was a good person, and like,
yeah,
but like beyond that, like there weren't a whole lot of examples, and most of them that there were like examples from like directors and stuff that come from very like strong
yeah.
Catholic background.
Or I mean, I think you could probably look at something like Father Stew, or movies like that. But it's like the subject matter is.
Yeah, and those
And
I would
it's
even
like-
consider like more faith. Like those are less. That one's maybe a bit.
But I think you can like take to the bank anytime there's a post-apocalyptic movie or show. There will be
stay away from the charming preacher.
yeah. There will be that sort of that typecast kind of character of like, charming, charismatic guy who's like trying to lead a cult because there's no internet and like he can get away with it, and humanity is doomed and all that kind of stuff. And so I don't know. I think also there's just lots of richness to draw from, I think, and I think Hollywood loves to do that, like to really exploit the hypocrisies that they see in the church and really kind of do what they want with that in a film.
Yeah, and like creepy religious people are creepy. Like they're
Yeah.
they're perfect fodder for that kind of role.
Right.
Like whether it's fair that that's the only kind that it's not balanced out, it's like a different discussion. Like I get why they go back to that, because it's like almost tailor made to be a creepy villain if you need one. Kind of where I come at this is like, yes, like I think it's almost objectively true that like there's just not a lot of good Christian believers in TV shows or movies that like aren't creeps. Like that Hollywood just doesn't tend to do a lot with that type of character. Kind of I guess like not to be like a total like contrarian, but like I was watching a faith-based film, one that we have a review coming up for in a little bit, and like every atheist character in it like was just like the complete scum of the earth. Like, they're
Yeah.
either like a total alcoholic, or they're yelling at their wife, or like they're just, they're miserable and they're all depressed, and like all of them, like, the Christian characters, they're all kind of, they're like, happy and a tight family. And like the atheist characters, like, they're just trying to like, seduce women, and like they're just like, they're loose living, and like it's, and like uh, like that's not uncommon. Like in
Yeah.
almost all the faith-based films that I have seen, like that tends to be the portrayal of like God's not dead. Like the atheist professor in that, like he doesn't just not believe in God. Like he's like a miserable, like angry. He wants to like demoralize children, and like he just wants to yell at people, and he's like shoving people, and like he's just like he's just a total jerk.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, it got me thinking a little bit about, as far as like, is that like our equivalent? Like, I know like we want to, there's always like a tendency to like, we're the victims in Hollywood. We, they never give us a fair shot, but like, can we think of like any faith-based films where there's like, hey, this character, he's an atheist, he doesn't believe in God. Like he ends the film still not believing in God. Like, like,
But he's like a decent
he's a
person.
decent guy. Like, he
Yeah.
loves his family. He doesn't go to church, but he works hard at his job, and like he seems like he's fine for film. Like, or is it only very like one-sided? Like
Yeah.
atheists are just miserable jerks.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just I think that's the tendency that humans fall into when they're, especially when you start from the place of like we want to tell a particular story, and we have a narrative that we want to craft, and in order to do so, like if you try and like make the other side, uh, you know, sympathetic, then like I think there's this fear that it's going to somehow undercut your message. Like if you end up liking the atheist character in a Christian film, it's like, oh no, like what does that mean about me and my faith? And like, well, what if that just confuses people? And so I think there is that like, no, we need to have like zero confusion, no ambiguity. Like this person's good, this person's bad. And I think the same can sometimes be said of Hollywood films. Of it's like, you know, you can almost see the kind of person that's writing in these characters into, like, you know, the on the surface nice Christian person who's like secretly a cult leader, or like is just a wicked person, but they're, you know, hugely hypocritical. Like you see almost, at least for me, I feel like you can kind of see maybe even the pain or the past hurts that the writers of that character are just kind of fleshing out in this person, because it's like, this is how they view Christianity, because they grew up in a church that was maybe very fundamentalist, and, you know, they left that at a young age, or they found out it was all just, you know, like it wasn't what they thought it was. And so you see, I think a lot of people who end up in Hollywood kind of have that view of religion, and so they're just kind of getting to play with those ideas in the characters that they write.
Like I've been kind of wondering too, as far as like, is it like, and I think sometimes it's clearly this person just hates religion and they're gonna use their
There's
platform.
that too.
There definitely is that, but like I feel like if maybe like, is it less just that like, you know, just like very antagonistic, like aggressive, we're attacking religion and we're gonna try and like, or is it more of like a, whether it's Christian circle or like the Hollywood bubble, that like we're in a bubble, and like Christians don't necessarily always like know a lot of just atheists. Like we have our kind of our subculture, and like atheists, like Hollywood types, like don't know a lot of, like all they kind of see of religion is like the creeps on the news, right? The different, like the abuses, like they don't necessarily have a bunch of Christians around them that like are positive. Like, is it that we're just sort of like mean spirited, like we have this bias against them, or is it more just like from both sides, like we're just sort of ignorant, like we don't understand each other, so we just paint like broad brush caricatures of like, well, this is sort of what we think in atheists, like because atheists persecute Christians, so they're all jerks, and like, well, Christians, they judge us, so they're all these creeps, like, and it's more of like we just don't have an understanding, like.
Yeah, well, there's no like with so many things, I just think there's no nuance to it, right? Like, so I think, and I think a lot of that is born out of ignorance, or just your just inherent biases of like, well, I'm not familiar enough with, you know, how an atheist lives or how this person lives to accurately portray it, and so like you're just gonna kind of guess at it. And likewise with, you know, a lot of Hollywood folks may not just, they don't have a broad experience with Christians of like various walks, and so they're just gonna kind of like end up stereotyping, what they think a Christian is. And I don't know that there's necessarily malice behind either one of those, because it would be kind of weird if there was malice for the Christians, because it's like, so you're painting the people that you're trying to save as these horrible, irredeemable types. And it's like, well, that's just kind of, you're sending mixed messages with your, Christian film about how great Jesus is, but yet like how, evil those atheists are, or whatever it is. And so I think there is. I think it's probably more out of just ignorance and just, that sort of unconscious bias towards the group that you don't know that well.
Yeah, and I do think kind of at the end of the day, at least personally, I know people feel different about this. Like, I just don't necessarily care. Like, I think it does matter, and it does change the way it does paint the narrative of like how a lot of society. But I think that's only really a problem if like the actual real life church isn't prominent, given a contrast to that. Like, like I feel like we don't necessarily, if we need to rely on like an atheist Hollywood director to like do positive PR for the church, like, then like the problem is with the church. Like, it's not, we're not doing a good job. Hey, Hollywood, why don't you try and convince people that we're good people? Like, I feel like if we're doing our mission in the world, like, then like, not that Hollywood and like those stories don't have an impact on it, but like, that's not the only story that they're getting, and like, it shouldn't be sort of the end of that. But hey, let us know what you guys think. Are you bothered by it? Like, I know a lot of us do sort of cringe when we see that, and maybe it depends on the movie, but it definitely has sort of been lately like more of a prominent thing, like this discussion. And it is interesting to hear sort of people within Hollywood who are not Christians, even they sort of recognize that, hey, we don't portray people very honestly. Like, what do we do? And at least for me, I think start with the church. Before we cast that first stone, maybe we should start telling a little more nuanced pictures in our own movies. Kind of the next story, another one that's kind of in the last couple of days become more of a prominent story, and that is Bella Ramsey. So The Last of Us, which I have not seen. You've watched
like 1.5 episodes.
Steven on our crew, he watched through this show. So it's kind of picking his brain on it. It was a show that I was interested in seeing, and just because I'm so busy, I just never got around to it, and now it's probably too late. So, but Bella Ramsey, she plays the I think it's Ellie, the lead character in this. She's kind of been like an emerging star. Like, this is sort of her breakout, her breakout role, and kind of, which is funny because like some of this stuff has been going on for a while, and it's sort of resurfaced as people discovered it again. And that is that another role she had is in doing a Christian YouTube channel. So she had a YouTube channel that she did, I think, 2 years ago during some of the London COVID lockdowns, where she was like at home for however many days, like 150 or something like that days. Kind of every day she just made a video of like giving devotional thoughts, or like she does like worship song covers, and like just like a very sincere, like sweet faith, like just sharing, like very non-pretentious, like they're fun to watch. Like they're just she's like 16 or something in the video, so like, she's just she's young, and she's just sort of sharing from her heart. And I think she kind of says in like the first one, like she's not a pastor, she's not a Bible scholar, like she's not trying to come with answers. She's just sort of sharing her own journey, and and one of them she shares sort of her personal testimony where she struggled with some eating disorders and stuff, and some other just depression and things, and how kind of her faith in Jesus is what kind of got her through that. And just real kind of interesting videos. And those are from 2 years ago, and they haven't, like, since the COVID protocols were lifted, like she hasn't added to the channel, like and she hasn't necessarily at least that I've found yet, like she might have to, because it's become more of a conversation. She hasn't like addressed directly the channel, but it does seem like kind of on the side. She has kind of steadily distanced herself from it. So a couple things, like an interview with the New York Times a little bit ago, she shared that like her faith is a lot quieter now. She's not doing the same, she's not treating it the same way as she used to. And then in Vanity Fair, she kind of, in another interview, she kind of talks about looking back on her past self and how she's not the same person. She's not just sort of posting inspirational stuff on Instagram anymore, and kind of downplaying that. And she made other headlines, or I think last year or maybe the year before, for identifying as like non-binary, and so it's just sort of been this weird like I don't know. It's been this sort of weird story of like these videos were only 2 years ago, but it seems like, and again, I don't know, I don't really know her faith now, and like there's not been enough of that to really to know where she is. But like you sort of have these Christian like very churchy but like sincere videos,
Yeah.
and then you have like 2 years later, you have sort of her kind of at the peak, kind of Hollywood, uh, kind of preaching a bit of a striking a different tune a little bit. So there's various things I think that at least for me I think is interesting with this story, and even just how all these like non-Christian Last of Us fans that are like finding these videos and like the commentary of like what they think of them and kind of looking back. But what are some of your thoughts on this? Like,
Well, I mean, I think like first of all, it just I want to note that it's strange that like the COVID lockdowns were 2 years ago. Like that feels like yesterday. Still, there's just this weird time warp I think that COVID did on the whole world. But, anyways, yeah, I mean, I think it's really neat, and it's I think the other thing would be that it just takes a lot of guts to do that. Like I could not imagine doing like posting videos on YouTube as a 16-year-old and just kind of sharing your heart. Like, so props to her for doing that. Like I think that takes a lot of guts um, to do, and especially to share your faith and just kind of be open with people and just, hey, this is what I feel like God's sharing with me, and let me share that. And so I think that's really cool. I mean, obviously I have no clue like where she is on her faith journey now. Um, and even like with the non-binary thing, and I think you had mentioned that she, had struggle with some eating disorders, and so like obviously body image it seems like it's probably playing a role in some of her psychology and how she thinks about herself. And so I think there's probably a lot going on, not to mention you're in this sort of machine of Hollywood making a hit show, and you're probably surrounded by people who think very differently than you and are super nice. And so I think she's also like, she was what, 16 when she did these videos,
yeah.
and she's like 18 now, 19, and it's like, you're a kid, like you're just a kid trying to figure stuff out. And unfortunately I think this is partly just part of what happens when you become famous as a kid, is it's like you've got to sort some of this stuff out very publicly, and unfortunately you don't have sort of the privacy that the rest of us have to sort through our faith and deal with those kind of things. And so I don't know, like,
because it seems like to me there's sort of there's like two ways Christians can like, and I think two ways that you've sort of seen Christians respond to this, and like maybe you can do both in some combination. But like on the one hand, like there's a lot of kind of knee jerk of like it is a stark contrast of like it could be one thing if this is like, if Belle Ramsey's like in her 40s and like, oh, we found her teenage videos and she had this faith, and she's kind of moved on from that now, and she like, but like it's 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like it seems like almost a completely different, like it's hard to see those two side by side and be like, this is the same, like, in only 2 years, like this like very rich, like just sincere, like open faith, and then like seeming, like, so a lot, like, obviously the quick response for a lot of people has just been like, there goes Hollywood again. Like, all it takes is like 2 years to snuff out, 16 years of faith, and like sort of some of those challenges. And like maybe we can get into it a little bit, but like just like some of the comments and stuff like have been like by Christians about her in this have just been like so ugly, like so like, like just the name calling, and like just how quick they are to like completely just cast her off, and like, now she's just one of them, and she's not one, like, too bad she like this so hateful, like, where it's like, well, like in some ways, like, no wonder like it'd be hard to like, if that's like how flimsy the it is. So there's sort of that side of just like, did she just totally sell out? Like, is she now like, now she's famous and now she's quiet, like, she wasn't quiet when she wasn't famous, like, and like some of that to play, but kind of the other part is just like, I don't know, maybe just like the lack of grace, and like, because like that's hard, like to be like that, especially to be like a teenager and to be like a female in that kind of role. Like, because even when she took the Last of Us role, like when she got hired, like there was like tons of backlash on the internet that like she's too ugly and she's too fat and she doesn't look as attractive as the video game character, which is
Dumb,
very
because
creepy.
it's not real. Like,
But like just all that kind of stuff like is dumped on her, and like like she's not an adult. Like, I mean, technically, I guess she is an adult, but like the like she's still developing and stuff, and like all that kind of pressure and like things that you're working through, and obviously stuff that she has, like sort of at least to me, some of the lack of just like maybe show a little grace, like
yeah,
that doesn't mean that we can't be maybe disappointed or wish that she's or maybe she is sort of selling out and like that she's swept up in the world and like that's sad, but like rather than just like oh we there goes another one, like if I was in that position I would have started another YouTube channel and been extra bold on my platform, like and just be like that is a lot for someone to take on, and like obviously they at some point, and maybe still, we don't know, but like had a very sincere faith, like maybe them don't necessarily need like the knee jerk of like write them off, they're a failure, like on to the next Christian celebrity, like.
yeah. And I feel like that's sort of where I come down. It's like, I mean, I think the videos are very sincere, and I think that's cool, and I think there's just like I think it's sort of a TBD situation, where like it does look like she's distanced herself from that, but like I don't know, like I could not imagine going through sort of all that she's been through, and especially like when you think about a young woman just having her appearance just like picked apart online, like that's brutal, and hopefully she has people around her that keep her from reading any comments online just for her own mental health. Like nobody needs to hear that about themselves, and so I think I don't know, I wish her the best, and hopefully she can come out the other side of this intact.
And I do think too, again, I don't know where she is, like maybe she's totally hey, faith, that was just a childish thing, now I've experienced more, I don't believe that, like that might be the case, like just to go off the like my faith is quieter now, like I know that's what a lot of people like have cued in on, is like doesn't necessarily mean like
it's all gone.
Like I could feel like in general that can actually be like a sign of like it doesn't mean you don't have a faith, you're not sharing like your faith. It's sort of like when people get mad at Chris Pratt that he's not like more often like quoting Bible verses on his Twitter or something, like so it doesn't mean he's not like on set in people in his actual life, and like that he's just like, but you're not ministering to these strangers on the internet, like you're only having a witness to people or like people in your actual life, like it's like just sort of that expectation of like that we sort of recruit, like we sort of expect her, now that we know where she came from, like that like, well, now she's famous, so like she has to be out there and she has to be the public spokesperson, and like she better still be making these videos, and like rather than just like maybe she's just using her faith like in a way that's not so like aggressive, not that our videos were aggressive,
but I know what you mean,
like more like outspoken, or like more like kind of on the roadside, like telling people to repent, like just more genuine of like just loving on people and sharing with people, like
no, and I think that's, I mean, I think it'll be interesting, because this is sort of, you can get a glimpse of how like how I think probably difficult it is to navigate Hollywood, at least with starting with a faith like that, and it's just like I'd be fascinated to see like what her journey is, like what it was over the last 2 years, and then what it's going to be over the next few more years, and I'd just be fascinated to kind of see behind the curtain on some of that, and just what are the things that what about her faith has changed over the years, and how does she see that? How's her faith evolving or shifting, or like what parts are quiet now and what parts are more loud? And I don't know, like it's just really fascinating to me to see someone like that go through Hollywood and seemingly become quieter on the faith side, but not necessarily like it doesn't seem like she's abandoned her faith. And so I don't know. I think there's a lot of just speculation. Otherwise,
and I think it's like I do feel like maybe to end it, like I feel like it is interesting, like because because of what it represents of like
Yeah.
a Christian kind of in Hollywood, and like how does that work, and like if she is losing the faith, then that's
I guess my point would just be like, let's be slow to like craft a narrative around
that's sort of my
around this.
It's like it's interesting, but like, I think as Christians we also need to like take a step back and remember like she is a human, like she is
Right.
she has pressures, she has stresses that I don't have, like as a prominent actor, as a young female, like there's things that she is going through and like working through, and like I'm not getting asked by the New York Times to like give some on the spot like talk about my faith. Like, there's this sort of that like armchair criticism of
Right.
this person, like, well, she must be a horrible person now. Like, we don't know what's going on. So I do think it is a good reminder for Christians, like, hey, still be aware. I think it is something to, and we can maybe you can have feelings about it, but just remember, like, these actors and celebrities and stuff like are people, and like they're, we need to not like just completely dehumanize them. But I don't have a clever segue from that. But I am thrilled for one, maybe the only time I'll ever be thrilled to not have to do my own host corner, because I get to rest my throat, my sick throat, and let Sam do all his rambling. But we do have the next segment of our show. We have host corner.
Well, lucky you, Daniel. You get to recover there, and I get to drone on here with my frog-like voice. But I wanted to, I would be remiss if I didn't do a host corner this week, and so I'll bring to you, I think I've talked about season 1 of the show, and season 2 is out now. Season 3 is in the works, so you can get excited about that. And that is the wildly popular, more popular, I would say, than the Rings of Power show on Amazon Prime, is Clarkson's Farm, season 2. And if you're not familiar, Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear fame and now the Grand Tour fame, along with his co-stars on that, he's had this farm in the Cotswolds in the UK for a while, but he recently started like trying to actually farm, and it's hilarious. And it's, I think, some of the best television, because you've got a guy who's been sort of a motorhead his entire life, and now he's learning how to farm things, and he has a sense of humor that he brings to it that's just, I think, unparalleled in the TV hosts world. And it's just a lot of fun. And on a more serious note, I think it also just brings awareness to what farmers go through. Obviously, it's specific to the UK, but I think anything that elevates farmers and people who put food on the table for the rest of the country is a good thing. So, plus it's wildly entertaining. So go watch Clarkson's Farm, season 2, out now on Amazon Prime.
See, so here's my question: Does a guy have to have watched season 1? Like, is it like
No,
the deep
no.
like plots and complex? Like, is it building to something in season 2?
Well, the farm continues to diversify and get better and better, but no.
So with that backstory, it helps season 2.
Yeah, it helps because you can say, oh yeah, I remember when they tried to do sheep and that didn't work out, and so now they want to turn the sheep barn into a restaurant. And so like there is some of that there are some through lines throughout, but I think you can jump into season 2 completely unaware and you'll do fine.
And I have no problem with being completely unaware. But hey, maybe I'll add that very, very low down on my to watch list, beneath literally everything else that I have on any of my streaming services right now.
That's because you don't have any taste.
But hey, if you guys are interested in UK farming and sheep and vegetables and all that kind of stuff, then that is a recommendation for you. I'm gonna pull an audible again that I don't think we have another story in our voices.
I don't think you want to hear us talk for much longer.
So we'll save. We're gonna get into the has the superhero bubble popped? So we'll probably just punt that.
Stay tuned.
Well, come back next time to find if it has popped or if it has not popped. But we'll save our voices so we can articulate ourselves for that one. But a couple things that we do have going on. I did a review for the Dungeons and Dragons movie, which, you know what? Really good movie. I enjoyed that movie. I don't know if that makes me a horrible Christian and a heathen, and I guess the comment section will let me know in the movie review. So far, smooth sailing. But I think I was able to see the movie early. I think it doesn't actually come out till next week. But check out the review if you're curious about that, or if you're frightened by that, or anything along those lines. I'm also seeing John Wick 4 in a couple hours today. So we'll probably have the review out for that.
Who knew there were 4?
Yeah, well, I have seen 0 John Wick, so I was gonna say I'm not a Wiccan, but I guess that's not the way to say it. I'm not a Wickian or whatever the
A Wicconian?
a Wicconian. So I'll probably have no idea what's going on, but I expect that it's not one that necessarily leans heavily on a complex plot. I think, hey, if you enjoy watching him, Kanye Weaves or whatever, shoot people, then that's probably all I need to know. But hey, check that. We will have that review probably out tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Any other kind of final thoughts, things going on for you to?
No.
You're
I'm all thought out.
you're all thought out. He'll have double the wisdom and stuff next week. But thanks for joining us, guys. Encourage you guys, if you haven't done so, subscribe to our channel. Just be a part of what we're doing at the Collision on our sick days, on our healthy days, as we kind of disengage with what's going on in culture. We got movie reviews and some other plans and stuff that we have hopefully coming out later this year as far as videos go. Would love to have you be a part of that. Like this video, share this video, all that kind of stuff. But most of all, guys, thanks for watching. Stay safe and continue to collide with your world for Christ.